Welcome everybody to the Real Dealz podcast, one of the top-ranked real estate investing podcasts for the last 7 years. This is the place to be for investing strategies you can actually use, expert interviews, and of course, some good old-fashioned entertainment. Now, here's your host for the show, Elliot, the REI guy, Smith.
What's going on, Real Dealz podcast and deal finders out there in listener land? I'm at you here with show 384. This week was a weird and very good, interesting week. So this week we have Jake Harris on the show. He is the author of a book called Catching Knives. He is also a real estate investor. Been doing it for quite a while. Also had some issues in 2008, lost quite a bit, and then was able to make it back. Currently, right now, they're still doing some single family stuff, buying big chunks of properties, but they're also doing hotel conversions. They're buying hotels. Last year, hotels just got crushed. So they've been buying up hotels and putting hotels in certain areas, getting them off the legacy brand. So he dives a lot into that. We also dive into a lot of other discussions that I think are just so good. And it was really a fun show for me. So make sure you stick around for the second half of the show, even if you're not interested in hearing about hotel conversions and things like that. So, all right. So we had our inspection last week. And so that went really well. We did have a couple of different things that we need to discuss and go over. But all in all, we are very happy about the building and the price that we're tied up in and all those good things. So there's a lot to learn about multifamily as you get into this. So the last loan my partner and I did, we went and got the property. It was a 25 unit and we went straight to Freddie Mac financing, 10-year term, 30-year AM, and then you have 10 years of floating rates, 2 years interest only. The rate was like 3.92%, no points, non-recourse, which non-recourse means that as long as we don't do anything intentional and we don't have any personal guarantees on the property to make that correct. Everything was underwritten on the property. All they needed was a personal financial statement from us to show that our net worth was equal to the loan amount. So, but we have payment penalties with that. We did the ladder step down. So we have a 5.5, which is 5% the first year, second year, and then 4.4, 3.3, 2.2, 1.1. And so really is not good if we want to pay off $1.5 million loan or refi out of it. It's kind of expensive. So money's locked away, basically, essentially. So we put, $600,000 cash in there. That money is locked away for quite a while. Now the building is performing. So we did buy some cash flow, got a good deal, and we liked it and we learned the process. So what we're finding on this one is we think we can increase the rents quite a bit. And we were looking at doing Freddie financing, and off the actuals, they only wanted to give us 70% loan to value because the debt to service coverage ratio was low from the previous owner or the current owner's financials. So most mom and pop landlords, they've done a decent job, but this is what they're doing full time. So there's expenses on there. They might not have been doing everything to the maximum as a professional real estate company would. So, but they did everything well for what they were doing. So we think we have a lot of room to grow in this property. But if we go straight to a perm financing, we're not going to get as much money. So we have to put 30% down, which of a $3.5 million is $1.1 million, which is a lot. Well, we just thought about doing like a general syndication deal with small syndication where we would do a GP, which is a general partner, and an LP, which is a limited partner deal, in a 50-50 split. So we looked at that, but then we're like, man, we're just giving a ton of equity away on this deal. Like, it doesn't make sense. And we started talking to some other guys, and we're like, on these deals, on these type of deals, what you do is you actually go get what's called bridge debt. And so bridge debt is short-term debt, kind of like a hard money loan, but not like a hard money loan. But it's like local banks, they just don't want to have the full term on their books. They don't want to do a 30-year AM or a 5 or 10-year loan. So they will give you usually 75 to 80% of projected, as long as the appraisers agree with what your projections are on your NOI, and base your loan off of that, plus loop in some rehab costs. All we need to do is bring in the equity, which, let's say if we can go 80%, say we have $700,000-800,000 of equity we need to bring in. If they agree with what our NOI future net operating income is going to be once we raise the rents and those things. So the rate is not really that much more expensive, maybe 25 to 50 basis points. So from, let's say 3.9 to 4.25, maybe 4.5 at the most. And we just have to do, make sure we're doing the rehab and all those things and get to that point, because we have to refi out of it. And I think it's like a 3-year deal. Some of them will go 5 years, but let's say our goal is to be done in 2 years. And so we're like, okay, we like this, but we still have to put $700,000 or $800,000 in this. It's still a lot. Would prefer not to put all that money and lock it away for that amount of time. So what we found out after, again, talking to some buddies, what guys will do is they will go borrow money from, a private lender, and let's say it's 8, 10, 12%. And it's just basically a personally guaranteed loan, and it's not secured by the property, but that's me bringing in my equity. So you have to have some good relationships and probably have some good net worth, decent net worth to do that. Or like we talked about with that coaching call a couple of weeks ago, you have to have some decent, built some decent relationships and rapport with people. So we go let's say I bring in 200, my partner brings in 200, and we go raise another 400 at, let's say, 8%. Balloon payment when it's all done, no equity in the property. And then we just when we refi everything out, we refi them and pay them off. So pretty interesting. That way it saves us a lot of equity. I mean, if we sell this and the projections where we're going to make, the 50% on the limited partner side makes $1.2 million on the sale. Like, that's a lot of money to give away if I can go pay 8% right now. And then also the cash flows, and then you got to deal with prefs and things like that. Now that deal works doing the general partnership, limited partnership syndication deal on bigger deals. So like, say we're at a 20, 30, $40 million deal. That's where it works, because then you can start charging fees for whether you're 70-30 on this deal, and 70-30 being the limited partners, 30 being the general partners. But then you can start charging fees, like a 2% acquisition fee. You're charging asset management fee of maybe 1 or 2%. You're charging a construction management fee of maybe 3 to 6%. You got a property management fee. So you start charging all these fees in there. So it doesn't count against a preferred return or anything like that. So you can still make decent money. I mean, if you do a $40 million deal and you got a 2% acquisition rate, I mean, you're sitting really, really good. So, I mean, you're making $800,000. So pretty good deal at that point, I would say. But this one, it just doesn't make sense. So interesting to say the least. Posted some stuff on my Instagram about it, but it's just fun to learn new things. And so really been diving into that. Also, I am negotiating today on one of our properties that we bought, the 24 unit that we bought 14 months ago for 1.6, and we got an offer this week, unsolicited. We're not listed. We weren't trying to sell it. I just happened to know a guy that was looking for agent that had some buyers looking for a building that looked just like they needed. Our building is basically what they need, and I threw it out there. We might be interested, and they came in an offer at 2.6. So I'm gonna go try to negotiate that, because we don't really want to sell it unless we have a property to buy and 1031 into. And this is a different partnership group I'm part of. We own a quarter of this building, but the goal would be for us to sell this, take our cash that we have made, let's call it $1.5 million or whatever, if I can put this deal, or $1.6 million or $1.7 million, and not spend any of it, but then just take that $1.6 million and go buy a $6 million building that's in a good area and a little bit more scalable. So I always look at these properties like they are baseball cards. So in my opinion, I don't need to just hold the baseball card. I don't need to trade it either, unless I see like a really good card that I think I can get a really good value for my baseball card, if not more than I think it's worth. And I can go find another baseball card that's more valuable, and I can get it at a decent discount, or I have some implied growth behind that and ability for that one to grow, or I have a firm belief that I can grow that. So especially if we think the market's going to double in the next 3 to 5 years on these assets, especially with inflation, I'd rather double the value of a $6 million building than a $2.6 million building, right? Just math works. So this is where math works. So really been fun. I've been having so much fun. Also had some buddies in here from Boise. They were on the podcast a couple weeks ago. Noah and Jeff, they were here with their fam. Well, Noah had his wife was in medical school, so she couldn't come, but Jeff was here with his wife and 2 kids, played some board games every night and just had a really, really good time. And so they went back today. I was a little sad, but it was hard for me to not work that much while I was here. But I shut it down pretty decently well. And so I just got a lot of fun things going and a lot of challenges. And I love solving problems and I love challenges. So anyway, hope you guys enjoy this week's episode. It is Jake Harris with Catching Knives. He wrote the book. I would highly recommend buying it or following him on Instagram. But here's a quick word from our sponsor and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, Real Deals podcast listeners, I want to talk quickly about our show's sponsor, Ironbridge Lending. If you guys have not reached out to Ironbridge already to talk to them about funding some of your upcoming flip projects, I highly encourage you to do so. I've known the owner of Ironbridge for a very long time. I've personally borrowed millions of dollars from them over the years to do a number of different projects, and I can say without a doubt, they are the best hard money lending company I have ever come across, and that is the reason why they are the sole sponsor of this show. I've had a lot of other companies reach out to me and want to sponsor this show, but I just won't do it. I feel like I need to be genuine in who we have sponsoring the show, and it needs to be somebody that I've personally done a ton of business with. So I personally vouch for their ability to be the best, hands down, in the world of hard money lending. You won't find better programs, you won't find better terms, and they're lending or will be lending in over 20 states. So chances are, if you're hearing this in whatever state you're in, it's definitely worth it to check out their website, reach out to them, see if they're lending in your state, and if they are, I would absolutely encourage you to do business with them. Another very cool thing to note is that they have a program for most rehabs where you can actually borrow up to 90% of the purchase price. Now, this is given the fact that you are actually buying a deal, which if you're listening to the show, that means you probably are. But if you have an actual deal on the table, they'll fund up to 90% of your purchase price, and they'll even give you rehab funds on top of that, which means that it only takes 10% down to get into a project, which is unbelievable in the hard money world. So do yourself a favor, reach out to Ironbridge Lending, have a conversation with them, see if they're a good fit for you and for your next project. I can guarantee you that you'll be happy that you did.
What's going on, Real Deals listeners, deal finders? We have a special guest. This is a friend that I kind of just met a couple weeks ago out of GoBundance. He wasn't at the event like I talked about last week, but he is doing some really cool things. We talked on the phone. He called me. Somehow somebody said I knew something and I was halfway smart to talk to. Called me and I'm like, man, you are so far ahead of me in so many levels. Very excited to have Jake Harris on the show. He's also an author. Just has a book released called Catching Knives. So we might talk about that a little bit as well. But thanks for coming on the show, Jake.
Oh, thanks for having me, Elliot.
Yeah. So why don't you talk a little bit about who you are, what you've done? It sounds you've bobbed and weaved and ebbed and flowed really well in this business, it sounds like. Why don't you talk about what's got going on now and kind of what you've done before?
Yeah. So, you mentioned the book. I did launch or wrote a book called Catching Knives, a guide to investing into distressed commercial real estate in April. I dive into that a little bit, some of that backstory, but it's getting close to 20 years that I have been a professional real estate investor. It started that journey. I was in the Army.
Thank you.
Somebody gave me the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. They're like, hey, Sarge, you should read this. And, it light bulb kind of moment kind of triggered. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to do this. I worked my way kind of towards that. I think probably a little bit of some of the things that you talk about is, being in proximity, being around other people. So I took a job bartending at a golf course. A country club. So I got out of the Army. I didn't really, have the right resume. I didn't have the money to afford to join the country club. And kind of in between there, I had a business that I sold, a retail business. We did trophies. So soccer mom, trophies, things like that.
For all the kids, every kid got a trophy, right?
Yeah.
So business was good back then. That's when everybody,
I was like, soccer moms will cut your throat for a nickel. Yeah. They will go to your competitor down the street, and so your margins are like razor thin. It was not what I envisioned of being a business owner. And I just kind of did it and was figuring it out as I went. In general, that's, as you get to know me, as far as I think it's about action and figuring it out as you go. But, things like the book, and I guess the wisdom that I've gained now is you don't actually have to make the mistakes. Other people have already invented the wheel. Don't reinvent the wheel, and you can leverage their knowledge to magnitudes greater. So, but anyway, I bartended, I got around other successful people, asked them, pestered them. Hey, I want to do real estate. I want to do real estate development. I want to, get into this. And they said, hey, get into construction, because everything real estate has a contractor involved. I don't care if you're remodeling a kitchen, you're building a new subdivision and moving dirt, there's a contractor involved. And the people that have had the most success come from the trades. And especially if you're looking at doing this long-term versus, just diving in and out of it. So that's kind of the path in which I took to it. And then ultimately into real estate investing for close to 20 years now.
Gotcha. It's funny, I didn't think about that, but I actually did construction, handyman construction for a few years. So I have a general understanding of like how to remodel a house, how to do paint. I painted a bunch, but once it comes to the development side, I have a partner. I don't want to know anything about putting streets in. I don't want to know anything about putting pipes in or building houses. I just don't want to know that. I just want to find deals. Sure. So it's, but I think that's a good skill set to come at, is understanding, because if you don't know anything about anything, it's kind of hard. But say you don't have a construction background and you wanted to get in real estate and you want to flip houses or do these things, how would you go start over?
Yeah. And my son has, this saying which it's now been adopted as kind of one of our family mottos is teamwork makes the dream work. Mm-hmm. So you had out teamwork, and then they respond with makes the dream work. Yeah. So real estate's a team sport.
Yep.
You don't have to know everything about all the different aspects. Like your business partner knows about the horizontal development of a project and putting the civil infrastructure and sewers and, water drainage, everything. You don't actually have to know anything about that. You now just have to know what that cost and what the time period is. And so that's what, the realization to me has been, is that you can collectively gather this information from other people. They can be consultants, they can become partners in a deal, they can be, a combination. It used to be kind of like the little triangle that I would draw out when I first started doing this is a third of a deal is the actual deal. A third of it's the money. And then the other third is doing the work. And so you'd have like,
funny. I say that all the time. When I'm talking to guys partnering with, I'm like, okay, there's three parts of the deal, the money, and the operator. Right.
And I go, I can get, so today I do, I run a private equity real estate company. We're investing all over the country. We've done, 1,200 something flips in 23 states. We're developing some hotels. We're doing conversions, historic tax credits, and funds and very complicated, securities documents, but it still kind of breaks down to that ultimate three things. You need somebody to operate it. You need money to do the deal, and you actually need a deal. And yeah. I go, you can complicate it. You can, skin the cat a bunch of different ways, but it kind of really breaks down to those three core principles.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. And the hard part, I would say, in this business is people try to do all three themselves, and they're really only good at maybe one or two of those. Like I'm good at the deal, finding deals and money. I'm terrible. I'm not an operator. My wife's a good operator, but so find deals and money, but deals are the most important thing right now, I would say, in this market. Would you say that? And then operator and then money seems to be easier to find at this point in time.
I think, it ebbs and flows in the times of the market. When there's lots of distress, money becomes the ideal thing because, it gets alligator arms, it gets scared. Right now, the government just printed $20 trillion and just kind of threw it out the windows. And it seems like there's just a ton of dry powder out there. And so, maybe there's deals that are getting done that shouldn't get done because people are sitting on so much money. So yes, getting the deal is always important, and kind of navigating that. And again, I think you mentioned it earlier, kind of bob and weave. Sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that. And actually, when the deal's good enough and you kind of have that stuff allocated in times of like, big distress, is you can be kind of a crap operator and still be very, very successful. Because and that was kind of diving into now some of my investment thesis is I wanted to move in markets and things that, there's a wave kind of coming. So instead of trying to be the Michael Phelps of operations and swimming, like you just got to paddle, get in front of the wave and let it go and take you, and let that market and your purchase on that deal become the momentum, because I think there's minor, and especially when you're getting into bigger deals, 5, 8, 10, $20 million deals, most people, operators, are about the same. Like, you can't effectively correct a bad deal through operations.
Gotcha. Yep. That makes sense. So I guess, segueing into that, and I find that very interesting because like you said, there's cycles, there's different markets, there's upswings. Like we're seeing a huge migration pattern right now due to COVID. So what are you looking at, especially from a private equity side of like, what are you looking at? What kind of deals are you looking at? Where do you feel like opportunity is that for you guys in this market? What's your kind of focused thought process right now?
Yeah, to be honest, I thought there was going to be more distress out there because of COVID. It, like I said, they printed a lot of money that infused and kind of kicked the can down the road. But where I like things are, taking advantage of, like you said, that net population migration. And I also like things that people don't like because there's a more of a disconnect to the pricing. I think multifamily, you can still find deals, but it's way, way, way harder. And you're also on a lot thinner margins as far as for room for error, so to speak, or margin of safety. If you're a new investor, it may be not the right place for you to go in because you can make mistakes in the multifamily, even though there's a ton of people trying to chase you down and you're doing deals that you maybe shouldn't do. That's my opinion. So where I look at that is, what are people shying away from? That's where you then sometimes have a discount to true market value. Right now, like I said earlier, hospitality, I think is a space that people are shying away from. I believe in the human desire to experience new things and different things. And I am not as bearish or on hospitality as a whole. And I think there's a lot of owners that are now just willing to just sell properties, and, you can get them at bigger discounts. So a lot of stuff I have, a lot of 10 cap plus, hospitality deals I'm looking at. And now we're trying to pick which one do we like better versus multifamily where there are 3s and 4s. And it's just like, man, this sucks. I don't like this.
Yeah. We're playing in the multifamily space, but we're in the more mom and pop space. They've owned it. Like the one we tied up this week, it's been in the family since the mid 70s. Kids inherited, now they're getting divorced. And but it's still, I'm paying a little bit more than I'd like to, but I have some efficiencies too that I can gain with buying it and things like that. And I think there's value, but it's definitely not, where you're talking in the 10 cap. I guess because hospitality was doing really good and then COVID hit and then their bookings just died. Right. And so you heard all these things like people are building hotels, all these things, life's good, life's gravy. All of a sudden COVID, they fall off the bottom of a cliff. Vegas went down, everything went down. So do you feel like that there is still implied risk with how quickly the government, and not on a political side, but there's so much difference, like in California to lockdowns, or, all of a sudden we're back to mask mandates, all these different things, or the restriction to travel with vaccines. Do you feel like there still is some implied risk and volatility in that market?
Sure. I think there's risk in everything. There's risk in, every asset class, every type of investment, so I think the risk on multifamily, for instance, like yours, is that you're buying it at a price that you're having to push, and you're having to bake in this lower interest rate. And, you're operationally, you got to be pretty darn efficient as far as what you're doing, and you got to hit your timelines. And then if you hit those, it all kind of works out, and you can hit your refinance, you push your rent rates. Great. If anything kind of goes awry, now your deal is kind of bust. And so when I look at that is while there's risk in hospitality, there's a bigger margin of safety when you're talking on something that's producing mid-teen kind of cash flow on a 10 cap, a leverage kind of basis. But when you look at that is I do a lot of other due diligence, much, much greater than a lot of other people that I'm tracking. Like you said, this migration, the population movement, job growth, affordability indexes, infrastructure, bond spends, because like they publish, government records of where they're spending bond dollars. Mm-hmm. And they may be doing a new park redevelopment, putting in a new light rail line, putting in new highways or freeways or other things like that. And those actually do have returns on investment. It's just not in the same traditional sense because they're not looking at that ROI as a private developer. They're looking at it as this is tax dollars and this is $800 million that we're going to go spend and putting in new sidewalks and doing a beautification of this area. And I go, wow, guess what? When I'm investing, I'm making an investment for the future, not what that past story is. And so that's why I'm trying to get my fuzzy crystal ball to tell me what and where I should be placing capital. Well, those bond dollars, the population movement it's helping to tell the story of what that future is going to be. And with that net population migration change is I believe there's a story that hasn't been told yet. So hospitality in markets like, Utah and Idaho and Texas and, some of these other markets. Mm-hmm. And I'm less on stuff in California or where you're seeing kind of how politically some things kind of played out. Yep. Portland, locked down, you had roving bands of people, taking over city blocks. And I'd be like, I would be more concerned that things like that came back in my underwriting versus like states in Florida and Texas and some things like that. We're like, we're not closing down anything. There's no mask mandates. And actually we passed it as far as from the government. And so then I go, if those things do happen in the future, which I have no control over in my investment, but maybe that net benefits outsized to a Texas or to a Florida or a roadside nature, hotel. Yeah.
And it's so cool technology nowadays that you can do this anywhere, right? You live in California currently?
Yep. And most of the time.
And do you have to leave California very often to go look at, you can do most of this, I'm guessing from your office, right?
Yeah.
Right? You haven't built a team.
Yeah, we built a team. And obviously from doing this in 23 states, there's a lot of properties I've never seen. I actually, because of the team, I don't know. Those are on the single family stuff. These commercial deals that, are $2, $5, $10 million, I'll still go put boots on the ground, but initial due diligence and assessments, we've put together systems to do that. So, you can hire with, Thumbtack and some of these other type of things, a drone pilot for $100 to go film 4K footage of an entire property, go take a look at the roof. What's it all from all sides? You can pull, traffic counts. You can take a look at these and really even some of the like Matterhorn things. If you're specifically focusing on maybe a market is you can have 3D floor plans and mappings with technology. And like I have layouts of floor plans. I know what roofs look like. I know all of these things, oftentimes before I ever put boots on the ground, I'm also looking at, like you said, demographic shifts. Who are people moving here? What is their education numbers? How much are they making? What kind of jobs are layering in? That's the other thing I like tracking is the economic development kind of an area. They're trying to bring new jobs into places. And so then they're trying to do deals that land 1,000 new Amazon employees or, Facebook or whoever be like, well, again, when those people get there, it's going to help change that market because they're going to do something. And oftentimes those economic development groups tie the incentives to them actually putting people there. And so they don't actually make any of those tax savings unless they build a campus or move 100 people there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny. Tri-Cities just got, I think they're getting 1 million square foot Amazon warehouse where I live, 330,000 people. Since we hit 300,000, it just kind of took off to the next level. So it's interesting to see all the economic growth that comes along with growing in the cities. So are you looking at more boutique hotels, like properties? Or are you looking at like Best Western, like, guys are people are traveling for work and maybe soccer tournaments on the weekends, or all of the above?
So yeah, kind of depends. So we're building this is not one that we did this deal before COVID, an opportunity zone deal down on the Riverwalk in San Antonio. And it's a new construction lifestyle boutique, very downtown urban core, driven with heavy F&B operations. But, like you said, I think there's some opportunities in the Best Western, Days Inn, Travel Lodge, group all of those kind of roadside travel hotels, not necessarily maybe soccer tournaments, but to a place where people want. So, Tahoe, Coeur d'Alene, Park City, places of Colorado where they're actually trying to get out into nature, and then deflagging them, getting rid of the flag and using technology in a couple different ways. The reason that a lot of these hotel groups sign up for a Best Western or a Days End or whatever is that there's a certain level of comfort that it's looks like this, and they can get some bookings related.
Yeah.
I actually have done a handful of different studies on the actual value of these brands, Marriott, Hilton's, Wyndham's, the groups. And what I've found is they're losing value as technology continues to disrupt them. You used to not be able to know where every hotel was in a town on your smartphone.
Yeah.
Now you can literally
Google.
just you'd be like, Alexa, book me a hotel in, Telluride, Colorado. And they're like, what 4-star one would you like? And you're like, yeah, that one sounds great. And so I see technology continuing to erode away those brands' value. And so they may be charging $100,000 a year just to have a Best Western flag. And you just go get rid of that. Now you have an extra $100,000 a year in NOI on a property. Some of you, I know some of the guys are new to net operating income, and that might be at a 7, 8, 10 cap on a property where you magically just made an extra $1 million of value on your hotel because you got rid of the flag. And I go, if you utilize social media, have a robust direct booking website, you can drive social media using things in the Instagram kind of world is replacing those brands. And then that is, helping to boost your returns. Of course, you also take it, like a lot of these things I'm looking at. I mean, I don't think anybody's remodeled them since, in 50 years. It's got my grandma's, throw cover on it, and you walk in and it's just like, there's no way I would stay at this hotel ever. And to me, I think it's, instead of trying to price your hotel, motel as the cheapest, you actually try to just become in your own category in those markets, utilizing a lot of different kind of factors.
Yeah. I talked about on a podcast, a solo show a couple of weeks ago, about NOI and just the magic behind NOI and cap rates. Talking about, my wife will charge, money for people we have a studio apartment building. And if they want an extra parking spot, 25 extra bucks a month. What does that do to the NOI, right? Or pet rent, what does that do to the NOI? It's like a magical thing that all of a sudden those $25, you add it up a little bit, adds $50,000, or whatever it is, to buy cap rate. So it's just magic. And as you were talking about your hotels, I would much rather never stay at a Best Western or a Hill or any of these. My favorite hotels are the boutique, not even boutique, but they're just nice. They're we stay at one called the Post Hotel. That one's an adult only spa one. But then you go to other places like Vancouver, Washington has one that's really cool. And it's just kind of their own brand. And it's got that woodsy updated feel. You just feel comfortable, right? You feel so much more comfortable there. They actually give a shit. And it's actually just as cheap to go book them on their direct sites now. Like I'll go look for hotels. It's like, it's no cheaper on Priceline. Those things are going to be gone here before it's too long. I can just book on their site for the same price, if not less now. So,
well, and what's crazy is things like Priceline charge like a 20% or 25% royalty. So those hotels are actually netting, sometimes 20, 25% less because they book through Travelocity or some of those other platforms. So the OTAs, the online travel agencies. And so, which was a discovery as I kind of got into this hotel space, I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, because here's one of my experiences is I would see a hotel, it might be listed for $100 on the online travel agency, Hotwire, Travelocity, Hotel Tonight, one of those, it'd be like $100. And we're just using that for arbitrary number. But then you go on the website and then their website was like 125, or I called the room. Hey, I want to extend my stay. I want to do an extra night. And I was like, it's $125. And I was like, but it's listed for 100 on Travelocity. Like, why wouldn't I just book through there? And they're like, yeah, sorry, that's our computer says that. Now I found out that, okay, I book it through Travelocity. They then fax or email them or whatever arcane, thing.
Yeah.
And then, but they're only netting $75 from that room rate because Travelocity took a 25% cut off the top of that. And I was just like, who in their right mind is allowing their front desk people to book that and allow them to, instead of saying, oh, I'm holding to, my computer says it was 125, that's the best I can do, and that's why I was like, well, if you just simply with the phone or online and you use, and that's the other thing that between AI and data scraping and other things like that, is you can make sure that you're priced appropriate and you're not giving up 20, 25% to the OTAs. And then on your website, be like direct book, because now you make an extra 20%. And again, what does that translate to?
NOI.
100-room hotel to NOI that effectively boost your overall value, $1 million or $500,000 annually because of that. And so that's where I go, there's a convergence of technology, opportunity, and a mistrust or of the risk of hospitality that people I think are shying away from. But I also think a lot of these technologies are coming in on the tails of the Airbnb short-term rental kind of stuff. Is like, now you can take those same things and leverage them into 30, 50, 80 room hotels and give a good experience. And I think, in my opinion, a little bit better than an Airbnb experience.
Yeah. My wife and I made a decision. We will no longer book Airbnb unless it's like absolutely just the greatest thing, because we've booked multiple Airbnbs this year. And we've like, oh, shoot, New York just locked down and you got that passport or the vaccine, all these things. We were going in September. So we're like, okay, we need to cancel this. Hotel, I called 2 days before. I cancel, I get all my money back. No big deal. Wash your hands. Airbnb, 50%. You take 50%. I've lost like so much money on Airbnb this year just because of 50%. It's like, they're actually more expensive than most of these nicer hotels. And it's like, it doesn't make sense anymore. And I'm just wondering, like, and I've also seen, I was reading an article the other day about now Uber's listing in some areas the cab fares, but now the cabs are actually cheaper than the Ubers. And it's like, there was this big disruption from, Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, all these things, right? And now it's almost feels like it's going to start switching back.
Yeah. And the convenience, some people will pay for that. But I was like, I think hotels are monumentally more convenient for booking and for experience. Exactly what you just said. A cancellation, be like, I had a change of plan. I want to add an extra night to my hotel. Like, try to do that for an Airbnb, be like, nah, tough. And so that's why I think there's there's an interesting book called Catching or Outwitting the Devil. Yeah. Catching Knives. I was thinking my own book. I'm seeing it. It's right here. So here's, right there. And I'm looking at that, but Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill.
Yep.
I recommend that. It's not about real estate or anything, but to give you a quick kind of synopsis of it is everything is both positive and negative. It is, as humans, we have the unique ability that we can interpret the environment the way that we see it. And so while Airbnb is, some people think, a negative to the hospitality because it's competition to the hotel rooms, I think and look at it as the positive. And so I just, in my life in general, look at all of things and how they benefit me and why they're benefiting me. And, there is, of course, a lot of negative all the time. And maybe it's being amplified by the medias and the sources out there. And I actually don't pay attention to those. And a lot of like big news events never even make it to me because I don't watch the news. I don't follow a lot of these things. And so my world is very, limited to the things that I'm very, very interested in. And I focus in on those. And I mean, of course, there's some hurricane or earthquake. I might hear about that a week later, but it's not the minute it comes out. And so that allows me to also position myself mentally, and my mindset is looking for how is this to my benefit. And that's what I break into in the book is I lost everything. Like the subprime meltdown. Like I had these houses. I was sitting on a street corner in Tucson, down the street from the, University of Arizona, crying. And, because not only was I not worth no money, I was negative net worth. Like I owed way more than these houses were worth. Things were kind of falling down. I was selling properties. Like I was coming to closing table with cash out of hand. Oh, I owe 300,000. I'm selling it for 275. So I'm bringing a check for, $25,000. Then I had more portfolio than I had cash. And I remember praying, dear Lord, can I please have no money? Like that would be super awesome just to be like zero, start over at nothing. And so to me, that was that mindset, and that kind of shift from that book was, how is this happening for me? What is this doing for me? And I think it's one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it allowed me to kind of focus in on my strengths and then double and triple down on those. Like, what do I do well? Like you identified, you're like, I'm good at finding deals and I'm good at finding this money. So should you try to be a better operator? Be like, no, I need to find partners. I need to find other people. Do more of what you're super awesome at is do more of that. Yeah. Do more of that, because that's the unique talent that, and I believe that, was God given to certain people. And we're not looking for the most well-rounded average-ish person. Yep. We want superstars in the lanes that they are. And then that allowed me to kind of focus on exactly those same things was, what do I do really well? And do more of that. Yeah.
The show that just dropped today, so we're recording this, this will be next week. It was actually called How to Become a Better Surgeon in Real Estate. Because I like the analogy of, I talk more about it in my dentist. I was at the dentist the other day and I'm sitting there thinking, when I go to the dentist, I only see the dental hygienist for 95% of that visit, unless I'm having work done. But she takes all the pictures, all the x-rays, does all the cleaning, does all the flossing, whatever, right? He comes in, looks at the pictures. Hey, everything looks good. Or, hey, we got some cavities. We need to do this. Here's the plan. Come back. We'll do this. Then I had a filling fall out, an old filling. So we go in there and his hands never leave my mouth because his hygienist is handing him all the tools. So he only has to do what he's very good at. And so I try to look at everything as like, if I can just do what I'm really, really good at, and I can find something that pairs really well to what they're really good at is a good fit, then it's just, I think it's really powerful tool. So, and I like that book, Outwitting the Devil. I'm doing a book. Me and my buddy are going to doing a book study on it. So just awesome. Start getting in that. I love the story behind that book as well as how it wasn't released. So if anybody, it's Napoleon Hill, How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? I think is that the one he wrote? I always get him confused. Think and Grow Rich. Yeah, Think and Grow Rich. So he wrote that in the 30s. He actually wrote this book in like 35, but he didn't want to release it because it was controversial at the time until he died. Then his wife didn't want to release it. And they just released it in 2011. The family finally released the manuscript. So it's actually a really cool story about the book as well. So what did you learn when you went bankrupt, basically broke? What you said you learned a lot, but like, what would be something that you really, really learned? Because people haven't experienced that. A lot of people in this industry right now that just started in 2010, 11, or me, me especially. I started in 15. I don't know what it's like. I've had the high tide the whole time.
Yeah. So, so fortunately I didn't ever have to file bankruptcy, but, I had some foreclosures. I had some foreclosures, but it was effectively the same thing as I had some properties foreclose on me, in 2008, kind of time period. I tried short selling. I tried to do everything I could do, but it was, again, very early. I was down in Phoenix and, subprime, epicenter,
capital Phoenix, of the world.
Yeah. And it was just like, it went faster and, oh man, it was just, it went. And so I experienced it pretty early on. And so it started. And so, you asked like, how did I discover the benefits of that? There's another very marquee book that happened right about that time period. So I had no money because, not only had no money, I had negative money. My bank accounts were overdrawn because things were on auto pay. And so I remember like, this account's negative and I have no money to, like, what do I do? So like I would walk to the bookstore. This is back when they actually had bookstores and physical books in stores. And I grabbed this book and I would read it in the coffee place. And then I'd go put it back on the shelf and then go home. And then I'd walk back the next day and read where I left off from the day before. And it was this book called The 4-Hour Workweek. And so it was Tim Ferriss, and it was, really the 4-hour work week is not about working 4 hours. It's about how to 10X everything that you're kind of doing and create leverage. And so I think leverage is one of the most crucial things to understand in life. And because leverage is not just we're talking about real estate leverage of buying a property with leverage as far as a mortgage. That's very important. And that's a component of it, but you're leveraging other people's time, other people's expertise. You're leveraging all of those other layers. I think books are, one of the secrets of leveraging decades of other people's experience. And you're getting in, 3-4 hours, depending on the size of the book, typically someone's 10 or 20 years of life. And so you get in 3 hours, 20 years of someone else's life or 10 years worth of their life versus a Instagram 15-second or 1 minute or a YouTube video and a snippet reel. And so what happens is when you actually looking at the highest return that you can possibly get is always by using leverage. Use books. Other people's knowledge. Don't reinvent the wheel. Use other people as part of your team to leverage what you can do. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a team. And then also the component of leverage of real estate and using other people's money. And so to me, it was that illumination of all of that. I don't need to be the guy that knows everything. I don't need to be, the one, and I'm trying to solve all the problems. And it was, how do I 10X that? And then the other component to this was, and I think GoBundance is a very crucial, much further along step that I didn't discover until later. But it was I was so myopically focused on one aspect of my life of making money that I was bankrupt in every other aspect and pillar of my life. Relationships were crap. My health was crap. I was just not a good person. My brother was you're an asshole. Dude, I just, I don't like you. You're so focused on this. I didn't go out to drink or hang out with people because I was just so focused on being a millionaire before 30. And I did, I achieved it. Awesome. But I never then created the systems that allowed me to sustain that and really amplify that to the long term. And so goals are great for leading the direction you need to go, but systems are for those that want to repeat and build upon those successes. I didn't understand how to do systems. I didn't understand the other aspects of life that are actually probably way more important than money, because money's fake. It's not real. It is something that we created as far as there's some very interesting books about, actually using bark and paper money and other things like that and the fiat currency of it, but essentially it's fake. And so be like, but your health is real.
Yeah.
Your relationships with your wife, your kids, your parents, your other things like that, those are real. And that's what people really remember about you. And so to me, it was focusing on all those other aspects of my life to become wealthy in every aspect of my life, learning how to leverage those other kind of components of other people's knowledge, other people kind of time, other people's money, and then, give back, more. And so that's where, to me, that failure was an illuminating experience for me, being introspective. I would not suggest that other people go do that. Go read my book as far as to learn some of those lessons so that you don't have to do those things. Trial and error is a very, very effective teacher, but you don't actually have to do that. You don't have to touch the stove. You don't have to go bankrupt or have foreclosures to learn those lessons.
Man, that just is, I felt like you're speaking to me in a lot of ways. I feel like I'm a lot better this year than I was last year, the years before. But some of my favorite books have been like the book Sam Zell that he wrote about him. I've been listening to a lot of, because there's a lot of books that are like how to do X, right? Or like traction, how to build these systems, or your book, how to do whatever it is. But I've been listening to a lot of books like the Bob Iger one, the Robert Iger, he was the CEO of Disney, the Sam Zell one, the ones about the CEOs of Blackstone and all this stuff, and learning about how these guys built their career and where they screwed up and where they were successful and how they looked at things. And it's so interesting to listen to those guys because, like you said, you're learning from other people's experiences. Like, books are the greatest thing. And I just called my high school yesterday to get my transcripts and my attendance records. I'm waiting for them to come in because I hated reading and I like barely passed high school. I still have nightmares. Like, I'll wake up in cold sweats because I had a dream that I'm at school and I'm going to have to redo my senior year of high school because I flunked out. Like, and I don't know why, because I don't use my school at all. Tested into all college classes, never showed up. But I love reading now and love learning. And I love seeing like stories like yours and learning from guys like you. And it's such a powerful tool. So guys, really hone in, and girls, hone in on that stuff. And then, man, what you said so much about money is fake. It is. It's just a means of barter. And somebody said that it has value, so it has value, right? The government says it has value, so maybe it has value. Well, until you see inflation. So what has value? And I'm trying, and that was probably my favorite part about GoBundance, especially I did the first trip last week. And, they had speakers there, but they had speakers about different things and they try to hit all their 6 pillars. But then there was so much time during the day to go build meaningful relationships with other men. And it was like so cool to build those relationships. And like, that's the hard part, because like you made a comment there, like goal to be a millionaire before 30. That was my goal too. Hit it at 29. Now we're well past that, in so many respects, but it's like, what does it freaking matter? Like I was miserable in a lot of my marriage. I wasn't being the best dad. And it's like, God, I just, but now we're putting the right things in perspective. And so I really appreciate you saying those things because it kind of speaks to me as well.
Yeah. And I think, and obviously the GoBundance group has been huge for me as far as, I don't know what it's been, 4 years, maybe 5 years, something like that. I got introduced to it before I actually joined. And so probably a year before I joined, I actually, I did pretty well in school. I went back, to school and went to grad school and, got degrees in international real estate and finance and other things like that, specifically because of what I wanted to do with this real estate. And so I got exposed to GoBundance and I was just too busy. Like I was rolling out this nationwide thing. We'd had our first kid, but I was like, wow, this is actually a lot of the things that I realized I was missing in my life. And so that, introspective journey was, working that way through and really, so right now I'm sitting on almost 2 years of working out every single day because of my GoPod and my buddy, Ken Wimberly. He's like, why don't you just work out every day? And I was like, you know what? I'm actually better at decisions like that I'm kind of like binary, like I'm all in or all out. So it's easier for me to do no carbs, no sugar, kind of do a keto kind of thing like that and work out every day than it is to try to do it every other day.
Gotcha.
And so what happens is it just becomes now a part of who I am. And so at first it was 100 days. I got a little break in there because we went and traveled to Spain and Portugal. And, I was like, yeah, I'm going to work out every other day. And then it's just kind of weird time. I also have some things that, I feel like things that happened a decade ago, like just feel like it was yesterday. And also things that happened yesterday that, feel like it was a lifetime ago. And so time is a little bit of a weird aspect to me. And so I don't know what day it is a lot of time. I don't know what week or year. Again, I feel very, very blessed that I'm kind of in this Groundhog Day life, that everything is kind of the same all the time. And it's because I've kind of constructed and architect this existence of my life. And I feel so blessed that I get to do a lot of the things that I want to do every single day. I'm not saying it's all, the sunshine and rainbows out there. I still have and run businesses and have multiple projects and employees that, COVID comes in, pandemics happen, capital calls we got to do, like still things suck, but I was like, the vast majority of it's pretty good. So I'm not very good at trying to understand, did I work out yesterday or today? It's pretty easy for me to just like, did I work out today?
Yeah.
Yes, no. And I can run every day. It doesn't matter if I'm in Miami or Cuba or California or wherever, I can run every single day. And so, it's, 600 and something days, October will be 2 years.
Nice. I get what you're saying. I literally booked out of the 5 flights last week for going from my area to Denver, to the place, to Seattle, and then to Portland. Out of the 5 flights, I booked 2 of them on the wrong days completely. Cause I just don't freaking pay attention of those things. Like, I don't know. Like you said, I don't know what day it is half the time. I know when it's the weekend because I look forward to Mondays. I like working. It's funny because I used to, how people always say they hate working and they hate Mondays, Sundays are the worst. I'm like, I really enjoy my family, but can it be Monday? I'm ready to do some cool stuff. So you really quick, I want to dive into one more thing. You were part of some groups. You did over 1,200 flips. You were part of some hedge fund groups that were buying all over the country, buying huge volumes. That is becoming a larger topic of conversation. I just read another article yesterday from Vice that's talking about, Zillow, Open Door. They didn't talk about the hedge funds as much, but they are talking about the amount of money that is pouring into this middle-class America housing, single-family housing asset class. We've had talks about this offline. What is your thought? And what you did basically, and then with that company a little bit, but what is your thought moving forward in this market? Obviously we don't have a crystal ball, but where do you see this, maybe the next 5-10 years going in middle-class America, single family housing? What do you feel like, is there opportunities? Do you feel like we're setting ourselves up for another 08 because they're missing something and they'll just get bailed out again? What's your thought process there?
Yeah. So to give you a little, backstory, a little bit of that is, so we bought a lot of single family houses and aggregated them and, put them into portfolios, sold them off to the, Invitation Homes, Tricon, the bigger kind of institutional capital conglomerates. So my take on that is the single family rental portfolio space is a very, very management intensive business. And had we not been buying them at half the, intrinsic value of the properties, it didn't actually make as much sense. But what Invitation Homes, the big, $1 billion kind of hedge funds did is that we're going to go buy $10 billion worth of homes. And then what they did is they securitized them, put them together in a big portfolio, took their bond money out, and then sold them for $19 billion. So it was like a big burr effectively, on tens of thousands and then hundreds of thousands of houses. So to also give you a little bit more context, there's 16.5 million single family rentals that exist in the United States. Institutional buyers, big capital of that, own about 500,000 homes. I mean, it was a few hundred thousand, again, I'm don't have up-to-date numbers, but
it's very small,
a fraction of the actual real market. And so,
but getting bigger though.
Yeah. But it's mostly mom and pop operators that are doing it because they bought a house and then bought another house and they're still renting out the one before. There's all kinds of inefficiencies in a, single family management. So, but where I'm seeing some of the institutional capital pivot is the build to rent, and actually thinking and managing stuff called 100 homes in one 20-acre parcel of land. And it really improves the management and efficiency of that when it's almost like a horizontal apartment complex. It's a normal tract of land. It looks like a normal subdivision, but you have 100 homes and you can manage it and you can do the maintenance, and you have one guy that does that versus 100 homes spread across the, Portland, Vancouver metroplex would take an army of people to manage that. And then it'll be horribly inefficient versus having them in one 20-acre thing. You got one leasing, one property manager, and a maintenance guy. So I see them starting to move and pivot into that space. I also see is some very big demographic shifts that are happening is you have the baby boomers and the kind of millennial, cohort of people that are getting married and having kids. Both of them don't actually want to own homes. They want to live in homes.
Correct.
They don't want to own them and they don't want to maintain them. And they want to be able to lock their key, peace out, go to Costa Rica for a month and come back. And so what we're seeing is that apartments are getting smaller. All new construction development of new apartments are somewhere in the 700, 800 square foot, size, and getting smaller, especially in the urban core. Like I think Portland leads the country in the efficiency size. And I think they're close to 600, 650 square feet is the average new apartment construction. On the other end of that, you have home builders that are building new homes for sale and they're getting bigger. So the average home that's being constructed by the Pulte's, Lennars, and the publicly traded are like 2,600 square feet and getting bigger. The reason that they need to build bigger houses is the land costs and the permit costs are going up. And so they need to get more efficiency to capture them. And homes are sold on the per square foot or, price as a home builder. But then, as a multifamily investor, it's based on your rents and oftentimes bedrooms that drive your rentals. And so what we have is a significant gap in the market from apartments that are 700-800 square feet to new homes that are 2,600 square feet. So there's this very missing middle that exists that I think institutional capital is being aware of and saying, can we go build 1,500 square foot houses that are 4 bedrooms that have a 10 by 20 foot backyard that has some of the efficiencies of multifamily management and that exists in there. And I think it's an absolutely untapped market that has unending capabilities. You have constraints from the construction prices, materials, and really you're needing a convergence of a lot of different other things. And we've been investing into some technology and to build factory-built walls, panelized systems to be able to build houses more efficiently in that kind of single family space.
It gives me a quick pivot. And I love that because, what they said, I was talking to a guy the other day, when you're talking about the size, you still have one kitchen and one bathroom, right? And so those are your big, costs or whatever, but the bedrooms cost per square foot to build, or your, open living room isn't that expensive. So you have to spread it out over a bigger size of the house, right? Because modular housing has been around for a while, which some part of me, I've seen a lot of modular housing that actually looks better than regular stick-built housing because it's built in a controlled factory, right? The walls are built in the factory. You come put it up on site. Seems to work really, really well. Why does modular or things you're talking about, why does it have a stigma? Is that just really good marketing from the home builders and the realtor association?
Part of it. So yeah, part of it is the stigma. So in modular, so you have manufactured housing, as far as that they, mobile homes.
Yeah. So I'm not talking those ones. I'm talking, the modular where like a foundation, it's just like a normal house. They just throw the walls up and they're like 2x4 is the whole deal.
Yeah. So, and and they often use this word to cover a whole different gamut. So panelized construction. So panelized meaning they build a wall.
Mm-hmm.
They lift it up and finish those other things like that. I actually believe that is one of the areas that we need to pour more into, because it allows you to site adapt versus, so, true modular kind of thing and a prefabricated, you're building a 6-sided box and then you're kind of stacking it on top of each other like Legos. And you're seeing that being more cost effective in markets like San Francisco and Seattle and LA, where your cost of construction's $200-$300 a square foot, where you're like, that's crazy, but we can go build it in Idaho, put it on a truck, drive it over there, and then crane it up and stack it up. And it makes sense. Mm-hmm. Where home builders, the Lennars and Pulte's and things like that, are building at under $100 a square foot. Maybe $100 a square foot is their price that they're building stuff for. So like, you don't have a price discount by being modular versus a stick built when you're at $100 a foot. But there's limitations, is we're having wages go up. We're having lack of skilled, workers. Right now, there's about 4.5 million residential unit shortage from demand, and supply can't keep up to that. The best we built in 2006 was 1.5 million homes. Like, they did a new residential, 1.5 million. Well, net normal, demand is about 1 million homes a year, or 1 million residential units a year from net population increase and migrations and other things. So we need 1 million homes every single year to just kind of maintain status quo. What we've done is we've had since 2012, 2014 been undersupplying the market, undersupplying. And that also translates to why you've seen price increases going up from 2014 to 15, 16, 17. 2008 to 2012, we were oversupplied. We built too many. The prices were falling. And then we got on the other side of that supply and demand thing. And then prices started going up. And now we have interest rates lower, more people willing to buy, more, capital. And you're about 4.5 million units short across the country. That's not evenly dispersed. And like you mentioned at the start of this, was where's that population going? And so there's demand drivers in other markets that are much more constrained. And you have political elements with that, environmental elements. Like California, it might take you 10, 20 years to get a project approved. So It doesn't really matter what the construction cost is. And those are all the variables that are driving up against the challenges that's facing the residential home market. But I think you have to look to Europe. They have been doing and building homes in different ways for the last 20 years. Part of it has to do with their labor pool force. Is when you hire someone in Europe, a lot of countries, you hire them for life. You can't fire them. Like, other than them committing a crime or doing anything like that, you hire them, they're yours for life.
Really?
And so, yeah. So it's crazy. Like in France and Germany, some of those other things like that. So they don't hire to ramp up when they have a bunch of demand. And so what they do is they invest into equipment, advanced manufacturing, robotics. A lot of these things are coming out of Germany and Sweden and those other places, because it's more efficient to buy a piece of equipment that you can resell or just turn off the power when you're not using it, versus hiring someone for life. And so what they've done is that's why they're leading oftentimes the world in advanced manufacturing, robotics and other things, because they have a political shift. And so they do a lot more prefabrication, the panelized systems, and building a little bit more sustainably, because they don't have trees, they don't have skilled workers, they don't have, this environment. Where the United States has had migrant workers coming up from Mexico in skilled trades in abundance, lots of land, lots of, trees. And now we're getting to a shift, is maybe we need to be changing the way we build stuff.
Yeah. The great thing talking about sustainability, if I build this in a factory, I'm building this plan to use one sheet of plywood exactly, not cut, half. I was talking to my buddy, I was looking at his dumpster and he had a bunch of piece of wood. I'm like, dude, those are big sheets. He's like, yeah, but they need to be an exact, full sheet to fit this. And then we cut them off. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense, right? But that's not engineered. It's not engineered for sustainability. So then your costs, if you have 10% overage, your costs are 10% higher, right? But if you can build in a factory with plans where you have zero overage and machines doing it, so you don't screw anything up, it's pretty amazing what you can do to cost. So I know you don't have a crystal ball. What do you think happens to the residential market? And my one concern about it is when we go back to 2018, mid 2018, when interest rates hit 5.5%, when the Fed was raising interest rates, they had to reverse that. It put a huge brakes on the market to extent for about 6 months. My only thought for the next 5 years is interest rates drive this ship is my concern. Would I be wrong in your opinion? Or what would your concern be if you're like looking at buying and adding rentals or doing real estate, single family real estate at this time?
So the question is first, my outlook on
outlook on that
for over what time period?
Let's say the next five years.
So I'm still very bullish on everything real estate over the next 5 years. I think the Fed painted themselves in a corner on interest rate. So the fact that they printed $20 trillion and they have to pay back that on the same interest rates. And so while I believe there is going to be layers of inflation, I think a lot of what we've seen in the last year is not necessarily inflation, but more supply chain disruption and logistical issues, factories being shut down, a lot of the lumber prices spiking up. Canada and the Pacific Northwest supplies like the vast majority of lumber in North America, and they just closed down their factories. And then it's not like a quick turn on the switch and, you have people making $10 an hour doing very dangerous work, working in factories, cutting down trees, doing logging, stuff. And then they were getting government stimulus at the equivalent of $40,000 a year. And so it'd be like, do you want to play video games or do you want to go back to your super dangerous job making half as much money? So those were the supply chain issues. And so to accommodate, the prices spiked. So I believe there's inflation coming. I don't think it's hyperinflation, but I think the Feds and every central bank in the world has been printing money. And so there will be some levels of inflation, but they can't raise interest rates without just absolutely shooting themselves in the face. Could they actually do that from a government standpoint and from the Fed? Absolutely, they could raise rates, but I'm actually seeing things that I think they just announced that they don't anticipate raising rates for the next 3 years.
I think Jerome Powell came out today, I think with their Jackson Hole symposium that they don't expect tapering because they're still buying $40 billion a month of mortgage-backed securities, right? They have there's either going to be a really big crash. It's like ripping a Band-Aid off. You're slowly pull it, then it's going to crash, or I don't see where this goes.
So I see, I think we have the roaring 20s and even a greater depression.
Yeah, I think I agree with you 100%.
And I go, but when that happens, I don't know. Is that 1929? Is it 2029 that this greater depression happens? I don't know. So part of the thing is, I read a lot of stuff on different economic theories, modern monetary theory, Keynesian economists modeling ECBs and other things. And some people think, we're just in a deflationary environment forever because of technology. I don't necessarily agree or subscribe to some of those. But what I do believe is at some point you have to pay the piper. But with all the tweaking of the levers, it's not as simple as it used to be. Like when every central bank is printing money at the same time, us printing money doesn't have the same inflationary impact that it did before when we were doing that in a vacuum or in silo. And so the Fed could continue this on for 20 years or 30 years or 50 years, and the music could keep playing until it stops, until they can't do it anymore. And then that becomes a very, very bad day, the world over.
Yeah, I think in order, because I love studying this stuff, I think us losing reserve currency status is probably a bigger risk to being that catalyst, especially with digital dollar, all these digital assets or whatever. But the problem, like if people are wondering, so the Fed can't like you made a comment, they printed $20 billion or $1 trillion. The government's, borrowing money, the Fed's buying all these bonds or treasuries. So the government has to pay it back at that interest rate. But if they raise interest rates, the government has to pay. It's just like with a mortgage. It's an adjustable rate mortgage almost to a certain extent. They can't borrow money at higher interest rates. So they're inflating the dollars. So they're basically paying the debt off at a lower cost basis. Same if you go buy a 30-year fixed mortgage, right? If you're year 15 of that, you're paying it with dollars for today dollars from 15 years ago valuations, right? So that's kind of what he's mentioning here to maybe so understand that. So if they raise interest rates, they're screwed. They have to keep them low or else the U.S. government defaults because they can't.
Well, and that's where I think they run more higher risk of the U.S. dollar losing reserve status is, so right now the Fed can just print any amount of money that they want. They go, we have $1 trillion due on our mortgage payment. Our bills are due or $1 trillion. Look, magic, we paid the $1 trillion. If we lose the US dollars off the reserve currency status, then we can no longer print money in that same way, and it causes a very, very bad thing. So if they raise interest rates and there runs the risk of default from a nation, then that is more problematic for them, in my opinion. So I think we're going to see a disconnect. Japan is a very good place to study this, of elongated periods of low interest rate and what that does. That's why I'm very, very bullish on everything solid asset and all asset types, especially with real estate, and that have positive cash flow. Because I was like, you can borrow at low interest rates, lock it up with long-term debt, and then have positive cash flow. It's only going to go up in value with those levels of inflation over a long enough time period.
Yeah. Unless we see, Japan, population declining. China is estimating by 2100, the population is going to be 700 million because their one child policy. That's the only concern I have in the long run is, maybe not in the US because we're still on a good uptrend. Millennials stop at wanting to have kids. I waited till I was 30. I mean, I don't know how old you are, but you just had another kid. But there's a lot of people that are putting off having kids or things like that. You got me excited. I love talking about this stuff. And I don't have very many friends that I can have these conversations with. I was watching a bunch of World War II stuff, but one of the main reasons Hitler was he had to win so bad is because they printed so much money. So he's like, if I win the war, then I can become the reserve currency or whatever. But since he didn't win, then it's just crumbled, right? But they had to print their way out of an inflationary environment. I love this stuff.
So, and you say those things with the one child policy, and part of those things is, I also think, and you heard David Sinclair in Lifespan, and how I think, read Peter Diamandis, read, Bold and Abundance, and part of these other things is like, what nobody ever factors into this is how clever humans are. And, we adapt the environment to our benefit. And I think, it's not going to be 80 as the average lifespan. Now all of a sudden it's 100 or 120. Mm-hmm. And so when that starts happening, you're going to have the population not dying off the way that it used to before. And, in the advancements of medicine and healthcare and other things, is people will be able to have kids longer, have more vital life longer, and which will then lead to, really a lot of people on this planet Earth. I think it's going to be a lot more. And I don't think there's a cap to it. I don't think the doomsday, climate change element of the world is going to hell in a handbasket. We can figure this out when we collectively decide we want to figure this out.
Unless we blow up each other up. But my favorite quote, one of my favorite quotes is a Ricky Bobby. I don't know if you ever watched Talladega Nights, but he says, with my high level of income and advances in modern science, I don't see why there's no reason I could live to be 250, 300. I don't know if you ever watched that movie, Will Ferrell.
Yes, I do. It's usually, when he talks about if you don't like this, then F you. I put my meme up as like, if you don't like real estate, then F you.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, I think that I just digressed into, Talladega Nights. That means we probably should end it. So, man, thanks so much, Jake. Where can people find out more about you, follow you? I feel like you are just full of wisdom. I'm definitely getting your book. But you got to have a YouTube channel where you're teaching this every day, I'm guessing.
We're actually getting ready to start launching some of the YouTube stuff right now. Catchknives.com. So all one word, catchknives.com. That's where you can buy the book. That's where you get most up-to-date information. Instagram, where I'm most active, jake.realestate, where I share some of the stuff that I'm doing, traveling around, looking at deals. Some of the deals I don't share on there because they're still secret and I don't want you to know what I'm doing. But after we have it in contract and we're moving forward, I'll share some of those things and the behind the scenes. But those are the two main areas in which, people can get access and tap into that. We're releasing, a masterclass kind of thing. So a kind of video series diving into more details on kind of distressed investing, buy things at foreclosures, trustee sales, how evaluate, do due diligence on deals, people that you should have on your team as well. So that's going to be a place that Catch Knives ultimately. And I've had some people approach me about maybe doing some coaching as well. That's a new thing for me. I'd never planned that.
I said no for quite a while.
Yeah, I was like, no. And I was like, well, maybe. So we're considering that, or at least I am. I need part of my team on board with it because I make way more money doing real estate deals than I do teaching or writing books or anything else. I like doing more deals, but it is incredibly humbling to be able to help, young Jake and young Elliot out there that is striving to start on the ladder to financial freedom.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I definitely can tell after that first call we had that I love your demeanor and your spirit. I feel like like you said, you were all about money. And I feel like you've done such a good job on the other pillars now. And just sound like just giving to people. And we talked for like an hour that day and it was just such an enjoyable conversation. And I feel like you are really living those 6 pillars that GoBundance teaches. And so I'm happy to know you and hopefully be more of a friend someday.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, my man. Thanks for coming on.
Cheers.